microphone should already be muted, but please confirm if it is not. Please do so. If not, I'll do it. Please keep your cameras on throughout the training, unless keeping your camera on messes with your bandwidth and stutter stuff. We'll be using the chat function for questions and answers, so please put your questions there at any time, and I'll answer them myself, but more likely I'm going to direct them to the subject matter experts that are teaching this class. We're going to have time for additional questions at the end of the session. And I know I'm looking forward to this session. I know that from the last class, the great outdoors, you see we bring folks in to talk about the subjects who are subject matter experts on the topic they're talking about. And this session's no exception. Ethan and Agnes represent decades of supervision in Vermont state parks, have supervised hundreds of folks, and they have indeed walked the walk. And I can't think of two better advocates for this subject than Agnes and Ethan. So take it away. It's all yours.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Frank, for that great introduction. Hopefully by now, after those decades of experience, we've learned a few things, and hopefully we're going to pass some of that knowledge off to you. Again, this may not be one of the most thrilling subject matters, but we've done our best to put some variety in it, and we hope you enjoy it. To get things kicked off here, hopefully everybody can see the slideshow and the audio is working okay. Now, I just have to do this in a screen where I can't see any of you. So, all right. So welcome to Supervisory Basics. And as Frank said, my name's Ethan Phelps, and I am the Parks Regional Manager for the Southeastern Region, Region 1. And joining me in leading the session is Agnes Barsalow, who's been our Master of Ceremonies and is the Regional Operations Manager for the Northwestern Region, Region 3. So this class is all about supervising in Vermont State Parks. Whether you have decades of supervisory experience or you're a new supervisor, there are some basic core supervisory skills that you'll need to succeed and thrive in the Vermont State Park system. We only have a short period of time to get through a lot of concepts, so Agnes and I have created the supervisory blueprint that we think will set you up for success this summer. It covers staff training, establishing a healthy workplace culture, and communication. Under the communication umbrella, we'll discuss providing feedback, staff meetings, performance evaluations, and how to have difficult conversations with challenging employees. Before we continue, though, we have a short exercise designed to get our juices flowing and thinking about the craft of supervision. Let's think a little bit about the supervisors that you've had in past work. First, we'd like you to think a little bit more and share some information. Everyone here has had at least one supervisor, and very likely many. Some of those may have inspired and motivated you, and others may have made you feel deflated or made coming to work less desirable. Maybe some of those supervisors were just mediocre. They weren't terrible, but they also weren't great. They just skated by. In fact, you may not even remember them. So Agnes is putting a link to a short survey in the chat. And while she does that, we'd like you to think about the qualities, traits, and actions of the best and worst supervisors that you've had. Think about the positive traits, qualities, and actions of the best supervisors. What made them great? How did they motivate you at work? Also, though, we'd like you to think about the qualities, traits, and actions of the mediocre or poor supervisors that you've had. So click on the link in the chat and complete a quick activity for us. We'll review the results at the end of the session. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to work on that, or you can work on it while we get going here in a minute.
Okay, so our workplace culture is definitely something that we value. And there's definitely some homework that everybody's going to need to do, definitely regarding workplace laws and policies. And you're going to need to study them. So truth be told, the honesty behind it all is supervising and managing your park staff goes way beyond the laws and policies. That's the boring stuff. Really, it's all about plain old common sense. So going forward, if we could magically pull your staff at some point in time this summer, when things are going along, I want you to think about what they would say about what they enjoy, or what they would say about working with you. Would they say that they respect your leadership? Would they say that they enjoy your management style? Would they say that they're being treated fairly and respectfully? Are you treating them with dignity, with equity, with any sort of kindness? So I definitely want you to keep these things in mind because really they're the common sense test. And they're the common sense test as to what type of workplace you're providing. I think you'll find it much easier to treat your employees as you would envision your great supervisor treating you.
As a supervisor, it doesn't matter whether your workplace is in an office building or out in a park. Everyone has to comply with workplace laws and policies, and you play a very important role in this. Sexual harassment in particular is finally getting treated as the serious problem that it is. Sexual harassment has been against the law for over 50 years, first codified in the Civil Rights Act of 1965, but unfortunately little has been done about it until fairly recently. For far too long, it has been normalized in our workplaces by supervisors that have either just ignored it or didn't know what to do about it, coworkers that have been complacent, and victims that haven't been believed or supported. Recent movements, like Me Too, have helped bring this pervasive problem to the spotlight. There's a very good chance that some of you will witness or perhaps even be a part of sexual harassment at work this summer. And harassment doesn't involve just employees. Visitors can be involved as well. This is why we require everyone each and every year to review sexual harassment training so you will know exactly what to do if you see or hear about it. Please complete the video training soon that we have on sexual harassment. It's part of the mandatory training for all employees. Oops. Unfortunately, we have an issue where somehow the slides advance on us, so just bear with us while that happens occasionally. So please complete the video training soon, and if you watch the video and still have questions about it now or later in the season, do not hesitate to call on any regional staff or myself. We'll all be glad to help you.
All right, so there are two major resources for our HR policies, the kind of nitty-gritty stuff. First one is going to be the Park Manager Manual, Chapter 200, and then the required postings for the workplace. In addition to reading our HR policies in the Park Management Manual, you'll need to post required posters about various HR and safety policies, and you need to have them posted somewhere clearly in the workplace. So if you think about when you go to a gas station and you go into the bathroom, there's all those posters. We need you to have those posted as well in the park. So I'd suggest you have them hanging up in the contact station or in the garage, somewhere where people can see them. The takeaway is definitely that you need to make sure to have them posted and have them somewhere where your staff can see them. That said, it's also really important to become familiar with the type of with the topics that are covered in these on the posters. And it's a lot of information for sure, but make sure that you as a park manager are well aware of these and that you know what's being covered in it. By doing so, you're setting a clear expectations for your staff and workplace behavior. And I'll mention in a little bit about how to weave this into staff meetings and performance assessments as well.
Okay, so we're going to segue here just for a moment and cover one additional thing. At this point, most of you probably know about Vermont's marijuana possession and use law. It doesn't change anything that we do in parks in terms of supervision, but you may have staff members asking about it. And if you do, be sure to tell them that marijuana use in housing or at the park during off time is not permissible because the law prohibits it in public areas and state parks or public places. It's as simple as that. Staff living in park housing can't grow it and no one can smoke it, so please pass that along to anyone that is asking.
All right, so where do you start when it comes with training your staff? One important thing that you need to know is that your employees are going to come in batches. So it can be kind of challenging. You can't just have, one day everybody gets trained all at once, and that's because everybody comes in batches. So for example, you may have park attendants that'll be starting the beginning, like right now, next week, you might have some attendants coming in. You might have some more coming into Memorial Day. Others may start middle of June or late June. And then finally, and kind of more or less unfortunately, due to attrition, some of your staff may start in July. But it's really important for you to keep in mind that it's difficult for us to backfill staff who leave later in the summer, which is why it's very important for you as supervisors to be rock stars, which will help you retain all of your staff. So from there, you might be wondering, like, where and how do I even begin to start training my staff? And you're probably wondering, where and how do you begin to start training yourself besides this training? So I'd like to definitely recommend you start looking at the staff website. I mentioned this yesterday in the COVID training. Our staff website, it used to be referred to as the portal. So just if you hear people talking about the portal, we're talking about the staff website. So here is the staff website, and on the staff website, there is a litany of information. We have all the COVID-19 updates. You're going to want to learn about those because you're going to need to train your staff on those. And you also still need to, don't forget, take that VOSHA test or training. And then we have all of our different reporting systems. Those are in there. That kind of gives you a background as to what you may or may not want to report on. Incident reports, wildlife. I can't really see it all through my screen, but park interpreter weekly reports, lots of reporting. We do keep track of things. There's also directories. So this is how to get a hold of people. That's going to have, who's at what park, really good kind of how to find information. And then from there, there's forms, and this is kind of a heavy hitter. You're going to have evaluations, which we're going to talk about a bit more in a second. Those are in there. Employment forms, I think is what that says. Visitor forms. So if you have different visitor groups, be volunteers, there's a ton of forms in there. So you're going to want to take a look at those, get familiar with those. And then there's also regional information. So every region, we have baseline things that we all do the same, but Ethan and I, we're different people. So we have different supervision techniques, similar to how you all may have different supervision techniques. So there's different regional information. So become familiar with the staff website. It's going to be super important. You're going to use it a lot, and probably oftentimes throughout the season, we will say, hey, check out and see what's on the staff website. But in regards to the training aspects, there are links for training videos, including all these trainings. We have a YouTube page, and there you can find a lot of our videos that we have posted. So be sure to look at those there. There are some that are mandatory. Every single employee needs to do, including your volunteers. Those are sexual harassment. The OSHA trainings, these are required by law that we have these. They are riveting. There's bloodborne pathogens. It's the best video yet. There's also PPE, where you'll meet Safety Sandy, and then also fire extinguisher training. So make sure to watch those videos. Depending on the region, there is we like to have documentation that people did watch those videos, so you and your staff are going to want to watch those. So get familiar with the employee website, and on there, one of the most important manuals you'll find is what we keep on referring to, which is the park manager manual. That's on the staff website. Within the park manager manual, I should also note that there is a whole section that we're talking about regarding attendant training and information. It has a whole information packet as well, and lots of materials on there, which is on the next slide, which is right there. This is going to be important information, super helpful for you. Of course, regional staff, we're here to help you as well. So get familiar with that.
Great, thanks. I noticed a bunch of questions popping up about marijuana use by visitors and the public and things like that. I just wanted to put that out that when I mentioned that a few minutes ago, it was mentioned only in the light of staff and staff supervision. We have a rules and regulations class tomorrow that will begin talking about the enforcement issues around that. So we'll be covering that in more detail in other classes. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit here, and we'll begin talking about communicating effectively with your staff. Effective communication within an organization the size of ours is essential. We have about 400 employees in any given season, 55 parks, 4 management regions, plus our central office. So really, the foundation of solid communication within the organization starts at the park level between you and the people you supervise. We're going to discuss 3 types of communication: employee feedback, both positive and critical, communication through staff meetings that you'll have at your park, and communication with your regional staff. So when providing feedback to your staff, hands down, providing feedback is going to be the single most rewarding portion of your job, but it can also be one of the most challenging. Positive feedback. When we give positive feedback, we may be giving it to a specific person or we may be indirectly communicating to other members, staff members nearby. Now, never give negative feedback in this manner. We'll cover that in a few minutes, but positive feedback can be motivating to the person receiving it, and it can also create an awareness of your expectations to other staff members who may be nearby. If you see it, say it. Hey, Agnes, I really like the way that you handled that customer. They were really grumpy and kind of rude, but you maintain your poise and you were really polite, and I'm sure that couldn't have been easy. Nice job with that.
Thanks.
Keep your positive feedback positive. Now, generally, we don't recommend using the sandwich approach where you say something positive, then something negative, and then something positive again. When you give positive feedback, try to keep it positive. More often than not, the feedback we give is more positive than negative. Sorry about that. And the behavior that we're seeing is generally very reasonable and appropriate. So what do you do when expectations are not being met? For example, staff come into work late, don't adequately clean restrooms, and have a poor attitude. Well, let me guess, I'm sure that some of you returning folks, this is kind of what we call the mid-August attitude. These conversations can be the most difficult to have. It's easy to avoid having these conversations and just wait the season out, but the right thing to do is to have those difficult conversations the right way, not the way that poor supervisors you identified a few minutes ago did. So now we've got a short video to show you to give some strategies on providing difficult feedback. And that is the wrong one. Here we go.
To give you an idea of how we can work with you to do things differently, we're sharing our approach to the difficult conversation, something that we often avoid having. So what are these conversations? Why do we avoid having them? Where do we go wrong? We avoid them because we
Is everybody getting the audio?
Yep,
Okay.
I am.
think they'll end up in an argument and there will be bad feeling afterwards. We worry that the conversation will only make things worse. We don't feel equipped to deliver our important message and stay on good terms. We persuade ourselves that the situation will sort itself out. All valid reasons, but sadly ones that mean we're stuck, not moving forward to address something which is likely to get worse, begin to impact on morale, motivation, and performance. So where do we start? We begin by collecting the evidence, and here's why this is so important. Let's start with a scenario. A person in a team who always does just enough to get the job done, never volunteers to help, is always the last to arrive and the first to leave. Lazy, inconsiderate, arrogant. It's time to have a word with them as this has gone on long enough. So we do all the right things. We take them to one side away from the team. We share our perceptions in what we think is an objective and non-judgmental way, and the response we get is not quite what we bargained for.
I just lost the audio though.
It's the word lazy that does it. It's disapproving and emotive, and not surprising you get a bad reaction. If you use labels to describe behaviour, people are likely to get upset. It's your opinion and your view will differ to someone else, and it doesn't help because the person still doesn't understand the actual behaviour that's causing the problem. So instead of trying to summarise what we're trying to change by using the label lazy, let's think about what lazy looks like. How have you seen the person behave? What did they do? What did they say? Imagine that you're filming them on your phone. What would you see? Once you've identified these examples of actual behaviour, you can begin to describe in clean language exactly what the performance gap looks like and what you'd like the person to do differently in the future. So preparing well before you have the conversation and being able to explain using clean language what the performance gap is are two essential first steps. So you've done your preparation, which includes finding an appropriate time and private place to chat. What next? Name it. Get to the point. No making conversation about the weather or last night's TV. Take a deep breath and tell them what you've noticed by giving specific incidents. Follow up with the impact before they start to explain their behaviour. At this point, the temptation is often to sweeten the pill or soften the blow. Stop. Don't go there. Don't dilute your message or its impact. Wait for them to respond and continue by asking open questions to clarify your understanding. So you've established the issue, listened to the explanation, and discussed what needs to happen next time. Job done. Or is it? Remember, we worry that our relationship might go wrong or people will get upset. So the final thing to do is make sure you end the conversation on a positive and encouraging note. So let's summarize the main steps you need to take to have a difficult conversation. 1. Prepare. 2. Name it. 3. Impact. 4. Next time. 5. Encourage. 6. Monitor and review. If you're still worried about using this approach to resolve difficult issues, why not practice it first by using it to recognize good work or to praise someone? You'll find it works just as well. Like all skills, if you want to do it well, you have to practice, and this may be a good way to start and give you the confidence to resolve more challenging situations. Good luck, and remember, while it may be difficult at the time, if you follow these steps, you will make progress and be glad that you had the conversation.
Okay, we'll switch back to our presentation here.
All right.
Okay. So there's a few strategies that we hope will give you some ideas you can implement this summer when you need to have a difficult conversation. If you're open-minded to trying this approach, then it can work for both you and your staff.
All right, so effective staff meetings. This is definitely something that we would like to cover in regards to communicating with your staff. And they are a super valuable and important tool. They're probably one of my favorites as well. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate your management style, and they're also an opportunity for you to really get the season and the day off started to a good start. So words of advice, as Frank said before, tried and true. Ethan will probably echo this as well. Before you start off any staff meeting, no matter how big or how small, take a deep breath and make sure you're in a good frame of mind, because you're going to end up having the right poise, and you're going to be set and ready for whatever questions may come at you from your staff in these meetings. Also, having that kind of calm, cool, collected demeanor will also help model what you're looking for in your staff. It's also really important for me to mention that sometimes when you are at work, you have to put your personal feelings aside, and you have to do that when facilitating meetings. When you're at work, though you may live there, it's not home. We're at work. So it's important that we not air our personal grievances during these staff meetings. And while sure, maybe your coworker might be family members, and half of your staff probably isn't going to be your family, it's important that we keep the difference of professionalism and feeling too comfortable in mind when having these meetings. Our parks are professional. They're professional workplaces for us as employees. And if there's anything that you should remember from this training session, it's that we are professionals. So in the park, your park role as the manager is definitely one of the most important roles, and modeling professionalism is undoubtedly something that we really want to put an emphasis on. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of what different types of staff meetings have, it's important to think about what should be a common thread through all of them. So it's the manager being positive, two-way street, having good communication, asking for feedback and questions. If any of you have worked with me before, my favorite way to end everything is, anybody got any questions, comments, or concerns? Having that two-way street. Don't lecture your staff. As soon as you start lecturing, you'll just see them glaze over. Nobody wants to hear it. Also, pick a time that works. 2 o'clock on a Friday when everybody's starting to check in, it's not going to be a good time to have a staff meeting. They're better earlier in the morning before things get too wild and crazy in the park. Sometimes it can work around lunch, and or, you know, later on in the day, depending on what the park is looking like. And then another really important thing to remember too is not to single out any staff members. I'm sure some of you have maybe been in a situation before where you've been singled out. Maybe you were on a sports team and you didn't make a goal and somebody might have pointed that out to you. It doesn't feel very good. So make sure not to single out staff in a negative way. If anything, you should single them out for good things that they've done. So staff meetings, we have multiple different types of staff meetings that we encourage you to have. First things first, have an early season meeting. This is one before the park opens up. It's really good for you to, at that point in time, connect to HR policies with your expectations. And you can go through and look at we have different outlines and grids for you to follow in the park management manual. It's in the personnel section. And we want you to review that because we want to have consistency across the board from park to park as to what we ask the staff to do. As a park manager, a former park manager, I came up with over years a document of expectations, and I'll chuck it into the chat in just a second. Feel free to use that. Change it around as much as you want. It was years of compilation in a Word document, and you should change it as you feel necessary. But those were things that I found from years that were really helpful for me to set out as expectations for my staff. They're also really good for me to set out as expectations for myself. So I'll put that in the chat in just a minute. And be sure to add to it things that you want to make sure are fit. Like number one, you got to make sure that the job is free of sexual harassment. And then there's other little things like, you know, using the park truck or, you know, different policies you might have in place. So reinforce it, get it out there earlier in the season. You also might want to consider breaking things off into little chunks. You know, you might go out and do some work in the park with your staff and then have another meeting where you can talk about, you know, any sort of what happens if you're late or talking about COVID, talking about different expectations. You can kind of break things up. It might be helpful to do that instead of just barraging everyone with information at once. And one of the most important reasons is definitely to get everybody on the same page, get the expectations met, and getting the message out there is super important to do at the beginning of the season. Write up cheat sheets as you're learning your park, or if you're returning to a park, things that you feel like your staff should know, write those down. Keep lists. Lists are going to be super helpful. I encourage all of you to keep a notebook, to write down lists. Back in the 90s, not that I want to age myself, we used to call notebooks Palm Pilots. I don't know if any of you know what a Palm Pilot is, but keep a notebook in your pocket to write things down, so that way you can engage with your staff. Which that goes to also that it's good to have a daily staff meeting. They are super critical as well, and they're just a fun time for the staff to connect. So tailgate meeting, usually having it before, you know, the busyness of the day starts. Pull out your notebook. What does everybody need to know about? These meetings are super critical. They're a great chance where somebody might be like, hey, by the way, last night when I was doing night rounds, the toilet and bathroom building number 3 did not work. Or it might be, hey, did you guys notice that car's been sitting in the day use parking lot for 2 days now? What's up with that? So these meetings are a really great chance for you to connect with your staff on a daily basis. They should be brief. They don't have to be long. It's just a good chance to get everybody on the same page. When everybody's on the same page, as a new manager or a returning manager, it's going to make your life that much easier. Good time to ask questions. You know, if you have new staff, they might be like, hey, I think I broke the computer last night. And you can confirm for them if they did or didn't. So if any of you have worked in the food service industry, you understand how important it is to know if you know, a certain item's not going to be on the menu. Same thing as with parks. There's that importance of knowing what is and isn't happening in the park. So definitely have a beginning of the season meeting with expectations, and then also try to have a daily meeting as well too. There's another type of meetings that are important to think about as well. These are kind of special meetings, and these are ones that are good for your staff and for staff morale as well. There's the bad weather blues meeting. Those are sometimes, you know, in June when it's just raining and it hasn't quite warmed up yet. and your staff is wondering why they're doing this because the campground's just not busy yet or the beach isn't busy, it's a really great time to kind of boost crew morale. So having like, I don't know, after hours picnic, or if you know, got a fire pit and you want to have a fire together, physically distancing, doing things like that, it's really good for staff morale. Another time is mid-season. Great to check in, have, you know, something after the park closes for the day, or once that kind of quiet time happens, you can hang out by the contact station, you know, kind of just to have a little bit of a check-in, keep an eye on things. It's really good to have those meetings because it kind of, it can be good for people to just kind of settle back and check in. If you need any ideas, call your regional operations manager. They might be able to give you some great, actually not might, they will be able to give you some great options to consider for these. And then towards the end of the season, it's also really good to have a staff meeting then to just check in, make sure people are doing things consistently. If you work seasonally, you know that there can be fatigue when you work seasonally. Good chance to kind of boost morale, make sure everything's going well, like, yeah, we've got this. And you also may notice too that, you know, you may be losing a little spring in your step. So it can be just as good for you as it is for the staff, making sure, you know, people are staying on customer service, making sure everybody's staying even keeled. So again, if you need any sort of input, reach out to your regional staff for some ideas. I would say too, just make sure to, if you do any of these meetings, schedule them a little bit in advance to make sure everybody can attend. And also it might be something that people can focus on go forward. Maybe you could have like a competition. I know one of the best things that we did last year was a park had a staff Olympics. Doing things like that can be really good. So maybe you could have a meeting about how people are doing with the staff Olympics. So just some meetings to be thinking about.
Okay, so let's move forward, and we're going to start talking about assessing employee performance. Earlier, we talked about some approaches to having difficult conversations with staff, in addition to providing positive feedback and praise. And oops, sorry about that. Remember that both of those approaches are needed and important. Studies have shown that people that do work that they dislike are more often than not report that the reason why they voluntarily stay at a job is because they feel appreciated. So positive feedback is a powerful thing and can indeed make the difference between retaining an employee and losing an employee. So we'll now see how we put this all together in assessing employee performance in written form. And we've got another short video to show you here.
Feedback. You should be open and willing to hear it and ready to thoughtfully and productively provide it. A mid-season performance evaluation is a formal tool for feedback to motivate and guide the remainder of the season. The end-of-season evaluation is critical to document any improvement. These should be given fairly and equitably using the standardized forms available on the portal, covering every position from volunteer to assistant manager. The review shouldn't feel like a surprise for your employee because you've been giving regular, informal feedback along the way. Give yourself enough time to think of tangible examples to support your feedback and avoid comparing employees. When addressing areas needing improvement, follow the format of referring to a previous verbal discussion, state the concern, and state your expectation. You can sandwich constructive criticism between points of positive feedback. Whenever possible, end on a high note. Have an assistant manager look over the review before you deliver it, or have your regional operations manager help you if evaluating assistance. Be mindful not to save the document on the desktop at work where anyone can read it. Give your staff a heads up of when the meeting will take place and that it will be a face-to-face discussion. Don't simply hand over the evaluation for them to read on their own. Whenever possible, schedule sufficient time away from the contact station to avoid being interrupted by calls and customers. If you're delivering a fair amount of critical feedback, consider planning the meeting for the end of the day so the employee can go home and process. You could also have the assistant manager sit on the evaluation with you. Keep it conversational and be ready to listen and clarify. Additional information and example evaluations can be found in the Park Management Manual on the portal.
Okay.
Feedback.
Yep.
You should be open and willing to hear it and ready to thoughtfully and productively provide it. A mid-season.
That was a great video, but I don't know that you need to watch it twice.
I love that video.
Oh,
Super secret
I've just not
evaluation.
watched it at least a half a dozen times in the past 36 hours, so I highly recommend it. Okay, so that was a great video put together by Shannon in Region 3, and really covers a lot of the highlights of what we'll be talking about. So to begin with, when we're talking about written evaluations, every seasonal employee under your supervision will ideally get a mid-season evaluation, and everybody that works for us, at the very least, needs to get a final written evaluation. And where can you find them? You can find them on the staff website, as you just saw, and let's go back to that briefly. Okay. Right. Nope. And how did I lose that? Okay, here we go. So you'll, as we kind of already saw, there's a whole section on evaluations in the form section. So if you click on evaluations, the whole form section opens up, and this is any mid-season and final evaluation that you'd need to give. And what we'll do here is we'll just take a quick look at a park attendant mid-season evaluation. And as you can see, the mid-season evaluation should be completed for any employee that works at least 16 weeks for us, around the halfway point, which usually works out to like mid to late July. This is a way to just document any kind of feedback or progress that you've noticed or mentioned and have had to work on. And if there are things that aren't going so well, you see it's just a simple checkbox as either needs improvement or satisfactory. If something needs improvement, that's going to be something that you've already witnessed in the first half of the season. Maybe had a conversation with an employee, maybe had to address it a few times. Maybe they're not picking up the bits of toilet paper in the bathroom. So if you check needs improvement, you're going to want to provide more detail in the written comment box. So if everything just turns out to be satisfactory on the written evaluation, all's good, then you're good to go. But definitely anything that needs improvement, you'll want to put more detail in. So let me go back to this website here, and I'll show you a final evaluation. And you can see the difference is this is done at the end of the season. Final evaluations have much more detailed criterion, from unsatisfactory all the way through outstanding. As long as an evaluation and the criteria all meets at least satisfactory performance, everything's good. You don't have to detail anything. You should at the very least make a comment at the end. Another important point about evaluations is that you're assessing the performance up to this point. You're not looking forward. So don't make mention of next year or in the future or things like that. Keep it to the work period that that's already gone by, and your observations of what the employee worked on. Now, so I see somebody. Okay. Right. So there's evaluations for all different types of employees, and as you saw on the list, campground volunteers have their own evaluation forms, and those are a little different, because they're not our paid staff, and often they like to have copies of those so that they can use it as reference for future volunteer work. And the campground volunteer evaluations are done only at the end of services. So who completes evaluations? Park managers evaluate attendant, assistant manager, and volunteer performance. Regional operations managers evaluate park manager performance. Interpreter evaluations will be done by Rebecca Roy, our fabulous Parks Interpretive Program Manager, who you met yesterday morning. For those of you that have interpreters in your parks, we highly encourage you to share your insights with Rebecca, and I'm sure you'll be having a dialogue with her throughout the summer, as well as maintaining a close relationship with your interpreter in your park. So let's talk a little bit more about having to provide those detailed written comments. There's a few rules of thumbs when you have to detail needs improvement or anything that falls into unsatisfactory or marginal. You know, kind of the big key here is if there's a problem, the written evaluation isn't the first time they should find out about it. You know, as Shannon mentioned in the video, refer back to a verbal consultation that you've had. You know, if, you know, just say, okay, Joe, you know, like we talked about the week of June 10th and again on, you know, July 4th, you're really, you know, missing the toilet paper on the floor. So just keep notes when you have issues, refer to those, put those in your feedback. Stick to the point, and if possible, end with a positive comment. We really need to have these types of detailed written comments for needs improvement or unsatisfactory performance, because it helps us defend you know, a decision to end somebody's employment, or when we decide not to bring somebody back in a future year. We really need to have this as backup. Examples of all these evaluations completed are in the Park Management Manual in Appendix 920. So there's a lot of content there for you to go over. And lastly, there's one additional type of written feedback that I want to talk about. It's called a supervisory feedback memo. I'll just mention this quickly. These are used very rarely and in very special circumstances where there's either serious misconduct or insubordination. An example would be you have a park attendant who does his job well, but for whatever reason has a lead foot and can't stop joyriding and when in the golf car. You know, clearly it's unsafe behavior. It happens in front of visitors. You know, it represents a danger to the employee, to others, and to the equipment. You know, so under no circumstances can we have employees speeding or driving recklessly. So if you observe this, the supervisory feedback memo would be an effective way of getting the employee's attention quickly and clearly detailing your expectations for remediating the behavior or the problem. If you think you need a supervisory feedback memo, call your regional staff and talk about it first to see if that might be the solution to the serious issue that you're having. So to sum up here, we want to get your season off to the best start we can by having regular staff meetings, adjusting them to the various times of the season from early to the home stretch. Keep communication going by offering praise when it's deserved, and as well as tackling the difficult conversations when you need to address an issue. Keep them to the point and be direct. When offering negative feedback, be sure to do it also discreetly and with kindness. Use notes from your verbal counseling sessions when you need to include a negative comment and evaluation form. Again, you can refer to examples of these in the Park Manager's Manual. And finally, do everything with as much as a positive outlook as you can, even the difficult things. Don't hesitate to ask any of us and your regional staff if you're not sure about the best way to approach having a difficult conversation, because that's what we're here for. We'll always have the time to help you with these types of things, and we'll support you however we can. Now, Agnes is going to talk a little bit about communication with the region.
And unmute her mic. Oh, yeah. If anybody's playing bingo, there it is. Unmute your mic. So anyway, regional communications, it's a critical part of our success. So they are also part of your job as being a supervisor is, yeah, you got to supervise your staff, but you're also supervising a park. You're supervising the operations of a park. So regional communications are huge. And when I say regional communication, that means talking to your regional staff, which is the me, the Ethans, the Nicks, the Leslies, the Quentins, the Bryans. Like we got to have the communication go out. So it's super important for you to have this and to communicate with them, because it's ultimately when you can work with your regional staff, you're going to become a better supervisor. Consider us, your regional staff, as resources to guide you through any challenging circumstances you might face this summer. And you're probably going to have some. We want you to definitely feel empowered to make decisions, as we hired you intentionally based on your leadership abilities. But I think it's important to emphasize that when you need to reach out to your regional staff, don't hesitate to do so. We're here for you. Chances are you'll encounter situations you definitely weren't anticipating, whether it be a staff issue or visitor issue. And always, we say this often in Region 3, it's always two heads are better than one when it comes to making difficult decisions. And for whatever it's worth, I just feel like it's important to say out loud that we, your regional staff, have all been there before. So don't feel like reaching out to your regional staff is a failure on your end. If anything, reaching out to your regional staff when you feel like you're having an issue is better on you to do that. We'd rather work with you in a proactive approach versus a reactive approach. Both Ethan and I have been park managers, and we have both had difficult staff. We've had challenging visitors. We've had to call the police. I've broken park equipment. We get it. So just reach out to us. We would rather have a clear dialogue than finding out about things after the case. So beyond reaching out to your regional staff directly, another really great tool so everybody in the region's on the same page as to what's been going on in the park is we have a weekly report. Each region they're slightly different in each region, but each region does have a weekly report expectation. You'll get more information about those from your regional operations manager, but kind of keep your eyes and ears open for those. And just remember that those are public documents, so anything that you write in those, be cognizant about what you are writing. You might not want to write that, hey, so-and-so, this employee, I really don't like them, I want to fire them. Not really quite the place to enter that, but it's just something to keep in mind that we do want to be in communication with you. So we're always there, we're by the phone. Another place where let's see here, where we want to get feedback from you all is regards to complaints. Part of being an effective supervisor is fielding these complaints. Complaints about our parks come in a variety of forms. They often come in comment cards, which we get digitally, and this year we're getting new comment cards or return to the old ones where people will write a note about their stay and how things were. Sometimes we get them back here in our regional office, and sometimes we get comments that go way up. And they might go to the governor's office. They might go to the commissioners. Mike's that guy that hung out with us yesterday morning. And when you feel like there's a big complaint coming, call your supervisor, let us know. Give us a heads up so we can communicate to Mike or to the governor. Keep us in the loop of things. If you feel like the news, you might see this on the news, you need to call us right away. But please keep us in line with keep us in contact about any sort of complaints you might be fielding in the park. Also emails. It's really important to check your email frequently and often. Our regional staff will be sending out emails as well as headquarters. And then again, as I mentioned just a second ago, remember that anything that is written in an email is considered a public record. So be careful about writing about sensitive information in emails. And then before you send your email, kind of ask yourself, would I be comfortable with this being printed in the newspaper? So keep contact with us, check your emails, texts, all those things, just keep us in the loop. And then lastly, weekends and evenings, when something happens in the park, even if it's at night, even if it's on the weekend, do not hesitate to call us. We're all doing this together. So if it's a weekend, if it's an evening, just give us a ring and we can help you out with whatever it is.
Great. Thanks, Agnes. So just to wrap up here before we review our some of the things you stuck in our survey at the beginning of the class. First of all, we want to thank you for for working with us this summer. We know that it's an intense job and it takes a lot of time, but we're thankful that you're here with us. I'm going to end the slideshow and turn the screen over to Agnes to
Cool.
share some results.
All right, thank you. Okay. And
while she's doing that, I said a question. I got a question about the supervisory feedback memos, and just to kind of reiterate with that, where if you think that you're headed in that direction, definitely give your regional staff a call.
For sure. Okay, so, and I just want to acknowledge right now it's 11:50, but I feel like this is some really fascinating stuff that we all might want to see. So just bear with us. I hope you're not, stomachs aren't grumbling. So, and I can send this out to folks too if you want to see this. This is just really interesting. So what are 5 words that describe your favorite supervisor? And I definitely encourage you to think about these, like enthusiasm, patience. These were your good supervisors. Try to channel them. Compassion, patience, helpful, hands-on, understanding, clear communication on a daily basis, supportive communication skills. These are a lot of things that we were just talking about. Hardworking, that's awesome. Selfless, mission first, fair, straightforward. I definitely want to send these out to everybody because these are pretty awesome. Supportive, flexible, respectful. All right, all the good words you want to hear. So these are things you want to think about as you're a supervisor trying to model past supervisors that you had. And again, here are things that everybody feel that is important to be an effective supervisor. Schedules and not busy work. That's a good one. Setting up your supervisees for success. Helpful, responsible, or responsive, flexible, strong leader. Authenticity. Awesome. Fairness and equity. These are really cool, you guys. Listening, determination, not thoughtfulness. Yeah, if we can all do this, this is amazing. I love this. All right. And then we've got, this is kind of interesting. Based on your past, ooh, somebody just entered one. Based on your past performance, do you feel that you have all the tools you need? So it looks like quite a few of you are feeling good. For you maybes, reach out to us. Let us know. We can help you. We can provide you tools. We crammed a lot into a very short period of time. This is a thing to consider. Have you ever had an uncomfortable moment with an employee? Looks like quite a few have. Let us know if you are ever having a moment where you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. Reach out. We can help you navigate. Again, 2 heads is better than 1. Are you comfortable giving clear and honest feedback to your staff? This is interesting, like, no, some of you are not uncomfortable, which is great, but some of you are, and some of you, it depends on the staff member. So food for thought there, like what might you need to do to bolster to be able to give uncomfortable feedback to your staff? We can have some tools to definitely help you. This is something for you to think about when you're giving your evaluation to your staff. A lot of you have said that you don't feel like you got a fair, accurate evaluation. So when you give your evaluation to your staff, really make sure that it is a fair and accurate evaluation. Is making a schedule a challenging task for you? Nope, that looks good. Sometimes that's an area as a supervisor where some people are challenged. And if you ever are, feel free again. I'm going to say it over and over again. Reach out to us. Have you ever felt like you failed your staff? 27 of you said no, and 15 of you said yes. So if there's some way that you feel like you failed them, it's okay. We're all human. But if there's some area where you feel like you could use some work, we probably have some tools for you. Do you ever try to emulate your favorite past supervisor? I'm so glad to see that 36 of you said yes. And the 6 of you that said no, that's all right. You're probably a pretty awesome supervisor. And then this is an interesting one. Do you ever second guess decisions you make when it comes to effectively supervising your staff? How often do you do it? Looks like some people do monthly, weekly, daily, never. Here's one that's really alarming to me. Have you ever seen and/or experienced sexual harassment in the workplace? 24 of you said yes, 5 of you said maybe, and 13 of you said no. This is something that we have 0 tolerance for in state parks. So please reach out to your regional operations manager, regional manager if you see any sort of sexual harassment in the workplace. Have you ever had an employee under the influence? Wow. A lot of you have. We operate machinery. We got to make sure that people are safe. So please, that's a great chance to utilize the supervisory memo is if somebody is coming into work under the influence. And then kind of interesting to see how many people, the tenure for people. Some of you, 7 of you, it's your first time, and a handful of you are 1 to 5 years. And then qualities you don't want to see: partially, dishonesty, partiality, manipulation, snarkiness, micromanaging. These are all really interesting. Ego or politics, hypocrisy, lack of respect and kindness, poor people skills. This is really cool. And I can totally, again, I'll send this out to everybody. And then here's one that's interesting: supervision changing over the time. Yeah, a lot of you have. And then how often do you feel you can come to your supervisor for help with staffing challenges? Once a month, looks like quite a few of you do. The nevers, what's up? Communication, call us. What's happening? Daily, weekly, this is a pretty good range of things. So hopefully these are helpful for you all to see this. And I'm going to stop because I'm sure that your stomachs are grumbling. And I will try to not share my screen anymore. Is everybody there? Ethan, are you there?
Great. Well, thanks
Okay.
a lot, Agnes. Thank you, everybody, for sticking in and hanging in there with us through this past hour. We appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to having lots of follow-up supervision conversations with you over the course of the summer and supporting you however we can.
Thank you, everybody.
Bueller?